Hi, my name is Darren Joseph from HTJ.tax, and we're the team that seeks to demystify that sometimes confusing world of international tax. And today we have the honor and privilege of having another conversation with Leonardo. Leonardo, could you please introduce yourself?
Yes, Darren, thank you very much for having me. I'd like to start by saying hello to everyone that is watching. My name is Leonardo Marques Sanchez. Just call me Leo, it's easier. I'm a tax lawyer, a tax partner in a law firm in Portugal, also a tax law professor at the Portuguese Catholic University. My main areas of focus at this point are national, domestic, and international issues pertaining to individuals. So I think that's a little bit of what we are going to discuss today, right?
All right, fantastic. And at least in my area of practice, quite common because there are a number of promoters that pitch the idea that yes, you're a Portugal tax resident, but by setting up these shell companies in other jurisdictions, predominantly in the US, somehow that creates some sort of tax benefit. Could you talk us through, at a high level, because I know it can get pretty complex, some of the tax principles involved in being in Portugal, being tax resident in Portugal, but perhaps operating foreign limited liability companies?
Okay, excellent. So basically, when you incorporate a company abroad, you're creating, in some cases, a buffer between your income and your
Correct.
personal level. Okay, so if you're carrying out business through a company,
Hmm.
opaque company, then
Hmm.
there should be no taxation in Portugal unless you distribute the income from the company to yourself, or if
Hmm.
you're operating in what we will perceive as a tax haven, and because we will apply CFC rules. So basically,
Right.
we'll deem it. This is really not accurate from an international tax standpoint, but the idea is, in some cases where while you operate in tax havens, the company will be deemed transparent. So
Sure. Hmm.
this is sometimes a way to organize your business. On that respect, and obviously on a very, very high level, I would have two comments. First comment is, uh, note that we are in an age of anti-avoidance provisions. So you should not have a shelf company with no economic rationale and with no
Yes.
significant activity
Yes.
elsewhere, just to benefit from any specific tax regime. Okay,
Hmm. Hmm.
this will have to be, we have to pay attention to that. We
Yes.
are no longer in an age of shelf companies. This will
Hmm.
may be audited by the tax authorities in Portugal. There are cases, so it's not just an abstraction that will happen. So, yes,
Hmm.
obviously you can have a business outside of Portugal. I don't see any harm in it, provided there is a business rationale in having it there, and the company has enough substance. So it's not something that happens just to pave the way to the benefits of any specific regime, application of tax treaties or whatever. The
Hmm.
second comment is, there are cases where companies are deemed transparent. LLCs in US may opt or
Yeah.
are transparent and may opt to be opaque. So
Right.
bottom line, LLCs may be transparent.
Hmm.
We need to look at the features of that entity
Hmm.
carefully, because again, we will be looking at the entity, and notably we will be seeing if it is opaque or transparent,
Yep.
using Portuguese law goggles. So it's not
Yep.
just because the US law says it's transparent, we will
Hmm.
follow. So
Hmm.
in a nutshell, it is possible to use companies abroad. Obviously, you should be free to
Hmm.
organize your business as you will.
Hmm.
Obviously, if you have an opaque company elsewhere that has a rationale, you will create a buffer for tax standpoint, for asset protection standpoint
Hmm.
elsewhere. So there may be
Yep.
advantages to
Hmm.
organizing your estate and your business in that way. But
Hmm.
economic rationale, we need to have a substance in the entities, and we have
Hmm.
to look at the features of the entity, to see how they will be perceived in the Portuguese law. And not don't get me started on, for instance, trusts, which are sort of entities we not fully acknowledge in the Portuguese law. So there are some elements that we need to consider.
Hmm.
It's not it's not a crime to have a company abroad, and it's in many times the proper way to organize the estate.
Hmm. Right. And then, of course, as you mentioned, you have to be aware of the anti-abuse directive, the principal purpose test, and so on. So So this leads me to another comment that people whisper about informally, but probably they don't whisper. They speak confidently about it because next door in Spain, the tax office has a reputation for being aggressive. They went after Shakira, Messi, Ronaldo. They take they use the U.S. playbook that you go after high profile people. It sends a message to everyone. Now, Portugal, apparently, from what we're told, does not do that, and so there's this perception that Portugal is a soft touch, and people do create these shell companies and they play games, and then their response is, well, how's the Portugal tax office going to know? They're not going to figure it out. Could you talk us through, at a high level, as someone who obviously is a qualified practitioner, is it true? Is Portugal still a soft touch, or is that something in the past and no longer applies today?
Well, um, I don't think it is, honestly. Portuguese tax authorities are becoming more and more sophisticated. They
Correct.
have extremely efficient softwares
Mm,
to control tax returns and interact with taxpayers. They
mhm,
have availed themselves with a number of legal instruments that will allow them to understand what is happening abroad. And
mm,
obviously, I mean, there are tax treaties for a number of years. We have had those instruments over a number of years, but two things or three things I would highlight within this context. First, there is a huge flow of foreigners moving into Portugal. So
yeah.
obviously, there are a few things that are bound to become under the spotlight of the tax authorities. I mean,
Mhm,
one thing was 10 years ago or 15 years ago when the number of people relocating to Portugal was not that big, or the
mhm,
number of people using some sort of triangular structures with shelf companies abroad maybe was not that big. I think the
mhm,
flow of people moving into Portugal will inevitably put pressure on the control by the tax authorities. Second, I would say that tax authorities have been accustomed to that sort of structures. So I
mhm,
have on my desk a few cases of abuse using shelf companies abroad. So
mhm,
the situations have been caught. There are instruments, but not only there are instruments, but the tax authorities have in fact put them in place. And
right.
third, of course, I mean, there are some jurisdictions that because they were used so routinely, um, I mean, every time you have a shelf company or a company, let's say, in specific jurisdictions, I mean, I would say red lights are flashing in the tax office because if you're using specific jurisdictions,
Yeah.
there is a chance that there's something, there's a somewhat artificial entity there. Obviously, this is, I mean, obviously, this is not the case in all with all
Yeah.
citizens, but the point is that I'm finding more and more in a position where I have to explain to the tax office that a perfectly legitimate structure is
Mhm,
not artificial just because
mhm,
this is becoming more and more used. So
mhm,
I guess
mhm,
from what I hear that you still don't have the high profile cases or the or as much aggression
yeah.
in Portugal that you have in Spain, but we'll get there. And I think by no means we should just
Mhm,
put our heads in the sand and
mhm,
pretend times are not changing. So the answer to that is not just, forget the problem, is to address it. And,
mhm, mhm,
let's just plan things ahead. Let's just make sure everything is robust. So
mhm.
I'm one. I'm not a huge fan of trying to fly under the radar as a
Agreed.
method of operation, while you
Same here.
have so much that you can do to avoid issues just by
Mhm.
planning things ahead.
Absolutely. Leo, if people wanted to get in touch with you, to hire yourself, to hire your team, what's the best way to find you?
I think I can be easily found on Google. So just Google my name, Leonardo Marques dos Santos, and I think the law firm, Miranda's law firm website will immediately pop up with my email addresses. That will be easier. I'm easy to find.
All right, fantastic. Thank you.